What's happening, fishing friends? Welcome to another episode. Today we're talking about 5 of my top favorite fall bass fishing lures. Now, listen, right now can be some tough fishing. The end of September, we've got fall transition going through. Water temperature is going to be kind of going up and down. It's going to start that turnover. Bunch of weird stuff going through. So if you're struggling right now, you're not alone. But stick with it. I promise that bite's going to pick up. It's going to get hot. Those fish are going to be keying on bait fish. They're trying to put on the pounds before winter. So stick with it. And that's what we're going to do now is get with it because I don't want to waste time. Number one, hands down for sure in the fall, funnest way to catch them for me, one of the funnest ways is on a topwater walking bait. And it's one of the most effective. You can use a larger bait like this. This is the KVD Sexy Dog. You can see this one's been through the mill. Run a bait like this really fast over those flats or on the edges of those grass mats or grass patches that are still green, the spots that are going to hold the fish, the bait fish, the insects, all that kind of stuff. Those are the places you're going to want to focus. You can run that by docks, you can run it by wood piles, anything like that that you think is going to be holding fish. And especially if you start to see, you know, on those lakes where the fish are out there feeding, popping, you know, going crazy, throwing something like that is a blast because you can't work that thing quick enough. You're pop, 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 and those fish just go unhinged to attack that thing. So it's fun fishing, but don't think that you have to have those lakes where it's schooling, right? You hear so much about things like this, the topwater walking baits, and oh, great for schooling fish. If you get on those things, you know, it's great. Well, what if you've got a yak or you don't have a yak or a boat? You're bank fishing, right? Still a great lure. Still want to have in your arsenal because I can't tell you the number of times I've been bank fishing. You just see small signs of bait fish fleeing. Something like that is still a great way to catch them. Now, as with each of the categories, I want to give you some examples, some colors that I like, some of the different lures and brands that I like to help you because, listen, you go out to some place like, you know, Tackle Warehouse. Of course, I'll leave all my links below. I do partner up with them. So if you use any of those, a little bit does come back to the channel to help me. But if you find it at Omni or American Legacy, wherever you like to fish, wherever you go and check out, it can be a very tough task to be like, okay, type walking bait, and then 18 million things come up and you're like, where do I start? Well, first off, for me, a lot of the lakes and ponds around here, I like to stick with a little bit smaller bait. Not that you can't get them to eat a larger bait. Absolutely, I've had amazing days on that KVD Sexy Dog, but something like this where the fish are keyed in on smaller bait, great 2 baits here. This is the Heddon Super Spook Jr., one of my all-time absolute favorites, and as of the last few years, I've honestly been throwing the Boyo more. You can see the difference here. It's still the Heddon Boyo. It's just basically a downsized Super Spook. So for a lot of the small lakes and ponds around here, I've been going with something like this. This was actually a LureNet exclusive. I'll leave their stuff linked below as well. They come out with special colors and stuff, but this little kind of ghost minnow color has been great around here. This is just like a clear translucent. I forget what color this is, but with most of these, you're going to see a theme. It's going to be either white, so like your bone, opaque, great for those low light conditions where you want just a solid color. Chrome, anytime it's sunny, I want something flash. They're going to see that flash. Going back and forth up there is great. And third is some type of translucent lure where it's sunny. You've got real clear water. You want something that's just real, you know, lifelike, like those little ghost minnows up there, something like this. So those are my 3 colors. As I was showing you before, you've got a whole bunch of different options in this type of thing. It's kind of reminiscent of the Vixen, Reaction Innovations Vixen. People pay like $100 for some of those old ones. I think they're a bit overrated. I know I'm going to get heat for that, but something like this with that one knocker sound, that's the way those spooks are. That's become really popular. It's a little bit different sound, a little bit deeper thud. A lot of people like that. This is the hard knock version compared to this. Got a hard knocker, but it's also got BBs in there. That's just the regular KVD Sexy Dog. So something of this shape. There's also this one that I showed you, the JERKBAITS Heckler. Very, very similar shape. It's got the 3 hooks. I do like having that for the topwater because a lot of times they're going to come up and slash at it. And like I said, you can't work it fast enough. They're not going to give up on it. They'll come up and hit it once, hit it twice. It might not be till the 3rd or 4th swipe where they actually get it, but they're just coming up swiping at that thing super aggressively. Or something like the River to Sea Rover. That's the 128 size. A bunch of different ones like this in this size and category. They all work great, so find one that you like in a color and go from there. Now, when it comes to the gear, don't overcomplicate it for something like this for a topwater walking bait. I go with something budget. I mean, you can get bougie and spend $300 on a topwater rod if you want, but I tell you what, bang for the buck, this Arc Catalyzer has been one of my favorites. Past few years, you've seen me use the absolute heck out of this thing. Fits amazingly well in hand. I've got the Abu Garcia Max X on there. So for a budget combo under $100, this one is really hard to beat. And if you want to go with a little topwater walking bait that's just a little bit different, That's the Thunderhawk Papa Waka. You can see it's got a soft tail back there. A little bit of a cup mouth, but still a larger bait that you can walk really fast and cover water. And that's going to be key. With these larger walking baits, that is one advantage to this larger size over something like this little boyo. If I show you the size difference there, great for being finessey, you know. But throwing this, you can sling that daggum thing from Iowa clear down to Texas and cover a ton of water. And that's really what you want to be able to do, because if you're chasing, you know, out in your yak or boat chasing those schools, or if you're on the bank, you want to be able to get as far out as there as you can to be able to hit all those different spots. For line, I'm still kind of old school. I go with the mono. This is the Trilene XL 14 pound. If you're doing those really long casts and you tend to have a softer rod, this rod is not overly soft. 7 foot, I know that'll be upside down for you there, sorry. 7 foot, medium heavy, not overly soft. More of like your fast, moderate fast action. If you got a rod that's a little bit softer, you might want to go braid to a mono leader. That way you've got that hook setting power. The rod's kind of absorbing that. With the braid to the leader, I don't ever like going straight braid to something like this. The braid is so limp there that as you're walking it back and forth, it's inevitable. You're going to get that braid caught in it. So that's why I like to do like a foot or two mono leader, like 14, 15 pounds, something like that. It's stiff and it sticks out in front of the bait, and it will save you from a bunch of headaches. Okay, lure number 2. As we move down the water column, I think one that everybody, no matter where you're at, fishing cooler water in the fall, going into winter, into those months, you definitely want a suspending jerkbait. There's a ton of good ones out there. Like I was talking about with those topwater walking baits, great at getting those fish fired up, getting them active, honing in on it. A bait that I think is probably the best at triggering something to bite is a suspending jerkbait like this. So what I mean is, it doesn't float, so you don't, you know, work it down and then it floats up. Not so much a sink. They can kind of change in different water temps. Like the, well actually, this one, the Berkley Stunna, is kind of a real slow sink. But something that's going to sit there pretty still, maybe just barely go down. I don't want them going up. Really want it to sit there as much as I can, because what you're going to do is work this with twitches of the rod. I like to do pop, pop, pause, and then pop. Just kind of making it erratic. And what this bait does is it'll do the crazy action, then just sit there. And you want to make sure after you're done working that bait with your rod tip, you just leave it set. You don't want this to go, and then as you're reeling your line, it's doing like this thing. You want it to dart, 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 and just stop. Dart, 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 stop. And that will absolutely drag those fish nuts. I don't consider myself a jerkbait master, but I feel like I'm pretty dang good at it, and it's a bait that produces for me every single year. Numbers of fish, good size of fish. In the fall, it's just, at targeting those suspended fish, I think it's one of the best ways at doing that. So the one I had here, there's going to be different sizes and different depths. So if you're trying to get down a little bit deeper, this is the deeper diving Berkley Stunna. 112+1. So I think this one goes down to like maybe 8, 9 feet, something like that. The regular ones, I think, go down to like maybe 5 feet. So it just depends on where you want to put that bait in the water column. The important thing is you want to keep it just above them. You don't want to be fishing below them. You don't want to be hitting the bottom with it. You're working that bait and keeping it right above those fish so they can just come up and grab it. If you've got some places where you want something going a little bit shallower, smaller profile, this is one of the new 97 sizes from 6 Sense. 97 or the 110 size. That's just referring to the millimeters, how long that bait is. So like, people talk about the Mega Bass Vision 110, how it's the best jerkbait out there. Again, I think maybe a little overrated. I know I'm going to take huge heat on that. I know. But it's just referring to the size of that bait. So this 97 size, 97 millimeters. A little bit smaller. Another really good one that I've liked this year, the Rapala Maverick or Rapala Maverick. A little bit shallower diving. You can see just a small little bill on it. Tends to run about the 3-foot depth for me when I've got like 12 to 15 pound fluorocarbon on there. I always use fluorocarbon with my jerk baits. The larger 6 Sense Provoke, I've had some excellent days on this one, specifically this color. The 4K Shad has done great here in the Midwest. Of course, you can't forget the OG classic, the Husky Jerk from Rapala. Man, I tend to stick to the kind of clearer, more natural colors with the jerkbait. Something like this that has just a little bit of flash. And that cleaner open water when I've got sun, just a little bit of ripple up there. I like to go natural. And then if you've got that pure overcast or in the early morning where it's low light, you just want a good solid white opaque silhouette is kind of how I look at it. And this 4K Shad, you know, just like an all white or something like that has done really, really well. I do get a little bit pickier on a jerkbait rod. So this is actually the Kistler Jerkbait Special. A little bit more expensive rod, like $250. When I leave all these combos and stuff below, I'll do like a budget combo and then maybe like a little bit more expensive one, just kind of depending on what your taste is. But the thing I like about this one is it's not overly soft. And that's what I want in a jerkbait rod, because as I throw the jerkbait out there, I'm working it with the rod. The reel is just bringing up lines. So you can do a 7-speed, 6-speed, 10-speed, whatever you want. I'm not moving the bait with the reel, just pulling up slack line. So when I work this, pop, pop, pause, pop, pop, pause. I don't want that tip, like if I have a full glass crankbait rod, I don't want that tip doing this after I've stopped and that bait under the water going, following my line. I want pretty much like a medium, moderate fast or more of a fast action, where after I start working that, the tip just barely moves and stops. Because I want that jerkbait to ding, 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 and just dead stop right there. Ping, 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 stop. And it just, usually when you're doing that, pop, pop, pause, pop, pop, pause. When you go to pop it again, there'll already be a fish on there. Most of the time for me, they hit it when it's just sitting there in between, doing nothing. They come up and grab it. So I don't like an overly soft rod. I've used, there's like the Okuma Guide Select great rod. Right now I'm actually testing out the Corrado, Shimano Corrado, the green rods, really like that. If you find a more budget rod that fits those specs, go with that. All right, lure number 3 is a lure that you can throw up shallow and fish it really quick. You can throw it out over points or drop-offs or humps, and you can just kind of yo-yo it, pop it up and down, or you can even let it sink all the way to the bottom and jig it up off the bottom. We're talking the good old lipless crankbait. Yeah, if you've never got on a bite where those fish are up shallow and you're just kind of burning that thing around the good spots of grass that are still left, or once that grass starts to die down away from the top of the water where there's still good stuff, you know, in spots below it, you're running it, you know, like a foot, 2 feet under the surface, but above that grass, those fish just sitting in there, oh, absolute blast to get on a bite with one of these things. And the big thing with the lipless is, as the temperatures cool down, a lipless crankbait like this, you tie it here if you've never fished one, has a real tight wobble like this. And that's what makes these so good, that subtle vibration in that cold water. You know, the fish aren't looking to chase something going, you know, insane. Especially as you get into later fall, these can be really, really good. And like I said, shallow, you can yo-yo them. That's really the 2 main ways I fish it. You can let them hit the bottom and jig them off the bottom, but 99% of the time, I'm losing it within 3 casts when I try to do that. Now, in my opinion, the king of budget lipless, if you're burning these shallow, the Cotton Cordell Super Spot, I still use and absolutely love it. One of the best kind of, I'm going to say budget versions, because there's liplesses out there now that are 15, 20 bucks for one lure. Used to be able to get these at Walmart for like $1.99. I think they're a little bit more expensive now, but still a great option that doesn't break the bank. Of course, the red eye shad, this one does not have the red eye in it, but a red eye shad, these have a little bit larger bill too. So these are great at throwing out, burning in, and running it like a crankbait. This larger nose here makes it so it runs like this and vibrates back and forth. Good for kind of bringing over stuff, kind of helps it, you know, bounce off things, you know, up and over stuff. There's some out there like the Lucky Craft LV500 and some of these other ones that are more made for, like I said, hitting the bottom and jigging up off the bottom. I honestly just don't do that as much. So some of these are the ones I use. The Booyah, either the one knocker or hard knocker. This is the one knocker with just that one big tungsten piece in there. Or something like these, the little Bill Lewis rattle traps. I mean, this is one of the old OGs. That's why so many people call all lipless crankbaits a rattle trap, because of that guy right there. And it's got this BB multiple things in there, like, you know, with a real high pitch rattle. So just try them out. Maybe, you know, the fish on your lake really like that one knocker versus the high pitch stuff. Try them out. There's a bunch of them out there. Here's another one. This is from Element. Right there, Element Custom Baits. Up north of us, our Canadian brethren, super good guy up there putting out some really cool different lipless that you just don't see all the time. Neat little bodies too. These smaller ones like this or this, the Bill Lewis, are great when it's a real tough bite, or if those fish are really keyed in on little tiny bait fish. And colors, chromish or gold when they're sun out to really get that reflection. Low light or stained water like this little red eye shad, I like to have an opaque or something with some bright colors in that dirty water. And if it's real clear, that more translucent natural bait fish look, something like this. All right, now for a combo, there's lots of rods and companies out there that are doing technique specific. So this is a square bill lipless crankbait, and that's usually the type of rod I like for lipless. A square bill rod is usually gonna have a little bit more backbone to it. This is what? A 7-foot medium moderate rated for lures up to 3/8 of an ounce. And when I do the bend test with this, if you've never done that, just lightly put the tip on the floor and start to bend down into it. It does kind of get down into the middle of the blank, but it's got a good solid backbone all the way up. This one's a little bit bigger around. You can see the diameter of it here because it is a graphite glass composite. So a little bit larger tube length there, but same deal. It's got a little bit more backbone because when you're ripping that lipless through grass or you're really trying to yo-yo it, you don't want a super flimsy rod. So you want something that's got a good tip where you can cast it. It will absorb that shock when you pull into a fish with treble hooks. You don't want to bend them out, but it's not super flimsy. So kind of that in between again. I honestly tend to fish kind of softer rods overall. Same thing with this one. This has been another good one for kind of my lighter, maybe up to like a 3/8 ounce lipless. This is the Dobbins Caden. You can see they even say this is for a number of things here. Cinco, spinnerbait, Texas rig, jig, fluke, one of those do-it-alls, but it's one of those where the Caden line tends to run a little bit soft. And when I do the test on this, still good backbone up to the tip, but it's got a good, amount of that backbone where it just doesn't feel like a pool noodle when I try to rip something through there, but it's got a decent soft tip where I can really load, throw that bait. So both of those are good options. Like I said, I'll leave multiple ones below. And usually for my line for those, I'm going 15-pound fluorocarbon for the same reasons I talked about for the jerkbait. Okay, lure number 4 is a two-parter, and that's because the spinnerbait's not making my top 5 this year. Now, each year we kind of go in ebbs and flows, but for the last few years, I have been having more luck on either the TOPSPIN or an underspin compared to a spinnerbait. And I don't know if that's because of fishing pressure in a lot of the lakes that I fish. A spinnerbait like this is a pretty big profile. So you can see this is supposed to mimic like a little small ball of fish. So it's got this turning, looks like a little fish. This turning, you've got your main one here. Now compare that to this, just kind of a downsized, more natural version, not as much bulk here. Even if you had a paddle tail on the back of this, it can make that spinnerbait a little bit bigger. Now, people might argue you're going to get bigger bites, bigger fish on a spinnerbait, but for the way I kind of fish around here with all the pressure and kind of downsizing, I've been having really, really good luck with an underspin or crack this baby open here. The first gen TOPSPIN. Now, I was going to go with just this, but I know not everybody has these. I would urge you to grab some if you've not tried them yet and you like to throw an underspin, especially if you're a bank angler. Makes this one a little bit different because it's got this titanium wire here. So it's like a really smushed, downsized, itsy-bitsy small finesse spinnerbait. This acts as a weed or brush guard for you. It's titanium wire, so even if you bend it, it pops right back to where it was, comes up to center line, and helps you stay out of stuff just a little bit better than the underspin. Also, the underspin, if you're fishing right over stuff, does tend to grab stuff here more. This is more of my open water kind of technique, or the sides of things, outside of stuff. If I'm coming through stuff, this has been a lot better option. Little small blade on it, and as you go through the different companies, this is the Great Lakes Finesse Underspin. Another really good one, you're going to want to use light tackle. It's got a little small finesse hook. This one I showed you here was from Berkeley, a little bit larger blade, kind of a bigger profile. Fish head underspin, a little bit more expensive, but it does have a really good look to it. Works really good with this piece coming down, the swivel, and the blade on it. And then this one that I was showing, the TOPSPIN. Now, if you rig this up, and that's what we're looking at, the blade's up on top here. It's like, the old beetle spin people will say, or I call it essentially it's a reverse underspin, an overspin, topspin. But it's got that up there. So as you come over a wooden brush, this tends to ride up over it. Doesn't get caught. It's got this in the way, so if you're coming around wood and stuff, just a little bit better option, especially for bank fishing or if you fish around more cover. So, around wood or logs, anything like that, it's going to tend to come over that stuff a little bit better. But if you don't have that, and you've got an underspin, throw that on as well. Each one kind of has its advantages. Plastics, I like the Kytex. If you want something a little bit more durable, probably my all-time favorite old one is the Reaction Innovations, either this one, the Little Dipper, the smaller one, or the Skinny Dipper, which is just a larger version of this. But probably right now, if I could only pick one, I think Rapala did such a good job with these crushed city baits. I'm gonna have a different video talking specifically about these. Probably my favorite right now is the Mayor, and these come in the 3 and 4 inch sizes. I think they're coming out with a 2 or 2.5 inch as well. So, okay, the fifth and final lure for covering the bottom, bouncing stuff around. You could go jig, you could go shaky head. There's a bunch of them. Hands down, my favorite for fall fishing is a Ned rig. This little tiny, this has been sitting in the back of my truck. Look at that. It's kind of made it go a little bit stiff. But anyway, a Ned rig like this is such a good way to target those lethargic fish, especially as temperatures really start to drop toward the end of fall. But it does great really any time of the year. You can pick up a Ned rig and catch fish pretty much anywhere throughout the entire year. But especially fall, when you're just looking for those fish that are maybe up eating some crawfish and such. If you don't have a super shad heavy lake, they're feeding on bluegill, but trust me, they're still going to be eating crawfish all the way up until those craws are completely hibernated and buried. This is a great way to do that. Just this do-nothing bait bouncing around off the bottom. And I tend to like a larger size plastic. Over the few iterations, trying different things, I've gone to the larger. So this is the big TRD. This right here, 4 inches, or the X-Zone Nico Ned Zone. These have been probably my 2 favorite plastic baits to use. Last year, specifically in dirty water, this color exactly, what is it, clown? Green clown did really good here in the Midwest for dirty stained water where you have, a couple feet of visibility is all. This one, I don't know if it's just the flake, if it's the green on it, did really well for me around here. But again, it's a 4-inch yum dinger. That's all it is. A 4-inch bait has tended to be my favorite. Now, if you fish, for smallmouth, around creeks and stuff, maybe something like this, your smaller TRD, or even something like this, the Berkley Power Bait Craw, as you can see, just a little, 2.5 or 2.75 inch smaller bait like this might be better for you. Now, one thing I will say is don't be afraid to experiment. The beginning of the year, you watched me throw this. Same for as the end of the year here, a little tiny craw like this. This is the Rage Scoundbug with some of my EWG Ned rig heads that I made. And that is one thing that I will say, especially if you bank fish. I still use them from the yak or boat, it doesn't matter, but especially if you bank fish, going to an EWG Ned head like this is going to save you a ton of headaches. Now, is it 100% snag proof? No. If you throw this around a bunch of wood, it's going to get tangled and caught. If you throw this in big chunk rock, you're still going to lose some. The big thing is to try to go as light as you can get away with and still keep bottom contact. If you're throwing this out and you can't, you're like, I don't even know if I'm touching bottom or not. You need to go a little bit heavier, but you don't want to go so heavy. If you start out with a 1/16, you don't want to go, well, a quarter must be good, right? The more you get down to those rocks, the heavier you go, the more of a chance you're going to have to get snagged. So usually for me, an 1/8 ounce is kind of that sweet spot. You can either go up to 3/16 or down from there, 3/32. Kind of mess with it, but usually an 1/8 ounce is the sweet spot for me and keeps these things good and weedless. It also keeps it pretty snagless most of the time. But don't be afraid to experiment with different trailers. This is the Luau Craw, Strike King. So it's kind of their play on the old hula skirted grubs. Got the little finesse skirt deal up here. Break these apart. It's got the craw trailer and back. So it's essentially your Rage Craw with a little bit of party added up front. Now, in my opinion, for a Ned rig combo, you don't have to go anything too fancy. Again, talking about beating a dead horse into the ground, this is the budget combo that I've been using this year and have been super happy with. Daiwa Iridex rod. Now, these rods do tend to run a little bit soft, so it's a little bit spongier, maybe not as crisp of a tip as some people would like if you're around a bunch of rock and stuff. You might want to go to something a little bit faster, a little bit, where it's a little bit stiffer, I guess, at the tip. I just said that, right? But one thing that helps with that is going braid to a leader. So I always go braid 10 or 15 pound braid to a leader. Usually 8-pound leader is always my go-to. That helps a lot with that. And it really helps you feel a lot of those bites that you would miss when you use that braid. So that's 7-foot, medium power, fast action spinning rod setup. Find one, that's the Iridex, and the Regal has done excellent for me this year as a budget combo. But just your simple spinning rig out there, braid to a leader, I would say try that. Otherwise, comment below and let me know what your favorite lure out of these is. Did I miss one? Do you have one that always does better for you? Comment and let me know. Those are my top 5 lures I gotta edit. Thanks for watching. Love y'all. And until next time.